Welcome, everyone, to the Evidence and Reasons Wild Frontier. Today, my guest, James W., will be talking about his views about aliens. A little bit of administrative things to introduce this show and also this channel. There are three channels that I run related to evidence and reasons for the Christian faith. I think all three are essential. The main channel, Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith, is oriented toward Christians, especially homeschool parents, homeschool moms. And so that content will be more to that audience. The second part of Evidence and Reasons is mostly purely academic. People who are Christians and non-Christians can study it. I will be covering making videos on a lot of science and other things that are traditional topics of study that I think are actually very helpful if one wants to study questions of Christianity. They have to be knowledgeable about science and history and archaeology. So I will cover that. And then Evidence and Reasons Wild Frontier. The Wild Frontier is an opportunity to dialogue with people who may not be Christians or Christians who are struggling with their faith. It's an opportunity to dialogue in a way where we invite people to just speak their hearts, and I think the process and the discipline of listening to and trying to understand where someone's coming from is really important. So before I continue to introduce James, I'm just going to read this from John Stuart Mill. I was introduced to this by a gentleman at the Discovery Institute, and it slips me his name, John Agnes Campbell, I think was his name, and he introduced me to this quote by John Stuart Mill. I'm going to share it on my screen. One can get it from Wikipedia. John Stuart Mills on liberty, Mills. And Mills said, "First, if any opinion is compelled to silence, that opinion, for aught we can certainly know, be true. To deny this is to assume our own infallibility. Secondly, though the silenced opinion be an error, it may, and very commonly does, contain a portion of truth. And since the general or prevailing opinion on any subject is rarely or never the whole truth, it is only by the collision of adverse opinions that the remainder of the truth has any chance of being supplied. Thirdly, even if the received opinion be not only true, but the whole truth, unless it is suffered to be, and actually is, vigorously and earnestly contested, it will, by most of those who receive it, be held in a manner of a prejudice, with little comprehension or feeling of its rational grounds. And not only this, but fourthly, the meaning of the doctrine itself will be in danger of being lost or enfeebled and deprived of its vital effect on the character and conduct, the dogma becoming a mere formal profession, inefficacious for good, but cumbering the ground and preventing the growth of any real heartfelt conviction from reason or personal experience." And the reason I share that is when I was going through church, they avoided that policy. I'm a Christian, but I think sometimes the church experience that was too insular was not good for my personal development. And that's just kind of my conviction, and that's kind of my little mini sermon for why I am doing this, and I'm inviting discussion of different people's perspectives. So most of the show will be featuring James W.'s views on the topic of aliens, and I met James through after one of his debates, and then with a YouTube after show, and it was just by coincidence or providence that I heard he had an interesting view about aliens. So James, take it away, and Um, I only heard from this individual named Amy Newman, who just maybe in one sentence said you had interesting views, and then for about 30 seconds you articulated it, and I just wanted to hear more.
Well, thanks to you for wanting to talk to me about this, Sal. Yeah, I remember that was a really good after show. I enjoyed that a lot. It was a good debate, me and Amy Newman versus Smokey Saint and Maddox. That was about 3 weeks ago. That was a lot of fun, and then we came and stayed in the after show for like 6, 7 hours, just talking and sharing views. So yeah, I did a debate on Modern Day Debate back in July on aliens and alien abduction, and it did get brought up during that after show. I'm not sure exactly how that came to be, but um, I do remember you seemed to be a bit interested in that. But yeah, I take the view that it's not for certain, but it's, I think, at least probable that aliens do exist, and not only do they exist, but they are interacting with the Earth in certain ways. I think you can say that there's a reasonable probability of that. I think a lot of the people that look at the evidence and look at things that they're maybe overly dismissive, overly skeptical of um, what's happening around us. And I think that the alien angle really ties a lot of things together that are just, on their own. You know,
Yes. If I may interrupt you again,
go ahead.
I
No, go ahead.
apologize for being rude. This is just for the audience's sake, and this is
Sure.
actually news to me. I didn't know you had a debate on this. I'm going to search for it, and when I publish this YouTube, it's going to be in the description.
Right.
I'm going to try to provide links to all the debates you reference. I'm going to be taking notes. I just want to reassure the audience, if they're listening, if they're tuning into this, I'm going to try to be providing links to the most important discussions for historical reference. So this was news to me. You actually had a debate on alien abductions at Modern Day Debate.
I I did back in July. Yeah, James. I had heard it in a debate maybe 3 weeks before that. He was looking for someone to debate that, and I said to myself, I'm like, man, who is he gonna find to go there and do that? Because of a lot, there's kind of a stigma behind it that it's kind of a kooky thing to believe in. It's kind of a fruitcake position, and weeks went by. I didn't hear anything, and I said, well, I guess no one else is going to throw their hat in the ring. So I emailed James, and we got that set up and had a good time.
And so did you have that view that alien abductions and alien phenomenon might be legitimate before the debate?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, ever since I was younger, growing up in the '80s and in the '90s, and you would see movies and but not even just movies. They had TV shows that would talk about alien abductions, and shows like Unsolved Mysteries, and then there was a show called Sightings, which basically just dealt with aliens. That was like in the early '90s, and being a kid, that scared the crap out of me. It was terrifying, actually, but it's kind of one of those terrifying things that you can't look away from. It's scary and it's frightening, but it's also, it just draws you in. It makes you curious because if it's real, then you want to try to figure out what's going on there, right?
Right, right. So I'm sorry to have disrupted your train of
No,
thought.
not
So
at all,
please,
not at
please
all.
please go on. Whatever's on your heart.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is most people, the idea that most people, now when I talk, I'm a atheist, so I'm speaking from a naturalistic point of view. I'm speaking from where the scientifically accepted age of the universe is valid, and all the modern science and everything that tells us according to the mainstream is true. So that being said, we know that the universe began from a singularity about 14 billion years ago, and the Milky Way galaxy is actually one of the oldest galaxies we know of. It formed not even, I think it was not even a billion years after the Big Bang, because the Milky Way galaxy is about 13 billion years old in and of itself. Now, our solar system is only about 4 billion years old, so that means the Milky Way was a thing, and it existed for uh, 8, 9 billion years before our solar system even formed. That's a long time. That you're having supernovas, and these stars are creating tons of heavy elements over all those years. So it's highly probable that there are many other planets like Earth in our galaxy, and we've found actually quite a few other planets. Many of them in the habitable regions of their stars, many of them around main sequence stars similar to the sun, where we hypothesize life could highly it could theoretically exist. Now, the important thing you have to realize about life on Earth is that the Earth is about 4 billion years old. Life on Earth is about uh, a little over 3 billion years, I think. So life arose on Earth pretty quickly after the conditions were such that it would even be possible. You didn't have to sit, the primordial soup didn't have to sit there for 10 or 20 billion years for something to happen. It happened pretty quick. And imagining now, extrapolating that, we have to assume that's a typical uh, condition for a life arising on a planet, a biogenesis. It could take longer, it could take shorter, but we don't have any other data on that. So we have to assume that that's a reasonably common thing that would happen. And so by taking that, you would have, you use the Drake equation. Obviously, you can plug in a bunch of different values to that. That's an equation to try to estimate the number of civilizations in the Milky Way. It takes into account, you know, all types of scientific variables, and if you put in like uh, if you put in the numbers to those variables on the far to one side, it would be that we're almost certainly the only thing alive in the universe. The odds that we're even here are unbelievable, and the thought that it would happen again is almost inconceivable. And then if you go to the other side and you put in the conditions most favorable, I mean, life would be literally all over the place. Now, of course, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. We don't see life that we can directly observe or that we've um, been able to interact with yet, per se, that the at least that the mainstream would develop, but we do have evidence that they are out there, but it's not, hasn't been proven yet. But yeah, I think it's highly probable that they do exist.
Well, this is a very interesting perspective for the audience's benefit. I studied under James Trefil quantum. I took a supplementary quantum mechanics course at my undergraduate alma mater, George Mason University, and he wrote the book "Are We Alone?" There are actually, unfortunately, I think two books by that name. This one's by Reid and Trefil. Trefil was my professor. His conclusion is that we live on a very special planet and that we are alone. So, uh, if you could help me a little bit, you mentioned the Drake equation, and while you were talking, I was furiously trying to take notes. And one of the problems with me is I can't take notes and listen at the same time. So once I start to type something, that was a real problem in class. When the professor said something, I had to actually switch off listening to be able to write what he just said, and then I'll miss by the time I'm done writing, I totally forget what he said. Can you say again what does the Drake equation? If you plug it in, does it mean
Right.
we have lots of life or a little bit of life, or
Okay.
is it you
So
just
the
you
Drake
adjust the parameters?
So the Drake equation takes several, and it's been updated over the years, but you're trying to estimate how many species or how many forms of life could be out there in the universe. And it has several variables, and they can be added to and adjusted. A lot of them we don't know for sure. So there's a possible range in those variables. So if you put in every variable as um, the the least likely, the hardest for life to exist, and you put that consistently across every variable, I mean, even the odds that we're here would be next to impossible. So it's almost inconceivable that there'd be other life anywhere else. on the other side. If you answer all those variables in the most favorable conditions for life, then life would be all over the place. Now,
Okay,
the truth
that's what I didn't. We actually used the same equation to model both scenarios.
It's the same equation. It's just different. It's just the numbers that you're plugging in. Like what percentage of stars have planets in the habitable zone? Because if they don't, then there's not going to be life there. What percentage have a certain type of star that's in the right sequence? It's not becoming a red giant and torching its planets. There's other things like gravitational issues, and I don't get too deep into the science. There's people a lot smarter than me that that deal with these hyper technical aspects of it. But it is a tool that science has used to try and estimate how many species of life are out there, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Well, just for our viewers, I should point out, for those who live in the USA, your tax dollars are financing these studies because there is a reasonably significant amount of budget in NASA toward astrobiology. So people care about this equation and these questions in ways that they don't realize because their money is paying for this sort of research.
The government does have protocols in place for perhaps first contact with an alien species. Yes. They do have contingencies for that.
Well, and that's important. And if I could point this out, for those of you who were around to see the Apollo moon landings, this was a very big concern, not so much encountering intelligent life, per se, but say microbial life on the moon. There was a lot of fear that when these astronauts came back, they would bring back all sorts of diseases that could annihilate the Earth. So, maybe we definitely know a lot more about biology today. And to my mind, these concerns have gone significantly down. But so let's see, 1969 was when oh boy, I'm going to embarrass myself with the math. So that's about 31 years. That's about 51 years ago that they landed on the moon. And people were very worried that when these astronauts came back, they were just going to wipe out the Earth. And I think there were even some rumors of moon disease floating around. I do remember there were some people upset that the astronauts were going to the moon and bringing back.
Well, if you remember, they were in quarantine, I think, for several weeks after they got back. Before they were able to have human contact, just to make sure they didn't have one of these newfound these alien diseases and die. So they were in quarantine for a while.
Which I don't know that much about transmissible diseases, but when I saw this spacecraft splashing in the water and them getting extracted and being out there in the open, I'm just like, well, those protocols help, but they don't completely eliminate any possibility that something didn't jump out.
It's always a risk.
Yeah, personally, I don't think they brought back anything. That's just So I'm just pointing out why so many tax dollars were spent on this. It was definitely a valid concern. Definitely a valid concern.
It appears they didn't bring anything back, but you never know. This COVID thing did come out of nowhere, so maybe, I don't know.
Well, so now we can get to maybe the more juicy parts of your investigation. So you're seeing all these shows, and they were scary, and I have to admit, it was the same for me. There were some movies on alien abductions that I saw when I was in my grade school years, and those were extremely disturbing. And I didn't know what to do with them. I actually was a little bit angry that aliens would abduct people and do these horrible things. Now, for the Christians watching this, I may have a show that talks. The creationist Christian view is that these aliens are demons, and it's part of a demonic deception. But this isn't. the show wasn't organized to talk about my views. I
Right.
wanted to hear your views. So maybe the
So
juicy part is alien abductions, if you want to
so
talk about that. So
well, when I was a Christian until I was probably about 30 years old. So I took that view at the time that if these beings did exist, that they were demons or that they were fallen angels of some kind. So that's the view that I took um, at the time. Now you got the another common objection people raise is that, well, there could be aliens out there, but they would be so far away that they would just never be able to get here because of the huge interstellar distances. And you know, there's been a lot of time. So if the galaxy started and planets started forming maybe 3 or 4 billion years later, and it took us 3 billion years to get to about from single cells to humans on Earth. If civilizations had a 2 to 3 billion year head start on us, even if they could only ever get up to half the speed of light, the galaxy, the diameter of the galaxy is 100,000 light years across. How many times could you cross that in a billion years? Probably quite a few. And that's only one ship. They'd probably have more than one ship. But and they wouldn't necessarily have to comb every inch of the galaxy. Um, we have an idea of extrasolar planets. So if they had a huge head start on us, would they know that we're here? And I think they definitely would know that we're here because the the contents of the Earth's atmosphere pretty much scream out to any intelligent person who's looking at the Earth that there's probably something going on down here because the contents of the atmosphere, uh, I'm sure that they would recognize that as highly potential for life. That this is not something that the oxygen and everything in our atmosphere, that they would know that oxygen was a, a, a metabolic catalyst, even if they had evolved to use something different. They would certainly recognize that life could be here. And so I imagine they would have probably sent probes or investigated it and marked that this is either potential for life or that life has arisen. And they probably would have checked back at a certain point. They're not going to come and interact with microbial life, but they would have came back at a certain point. Now, so it's very likely they're out there. They probably would know that we're here. I definitely think they have had enough time to get here, assuming even that they don't have, light travel or faster than light travel. Would they want to come here? Would they want to? And I think at least some of them would. We're an exploring race of people. We like to learn. We're curious. We want to know what's out there. We want to learn as much as we can. And I think they would have similar traits like that. And now moving into the alien abduction thing, and
yes,
this is why it makes
and
so
if,
much
if you want to
sense.
talk about that,
Go ahead.
I
Yeah,
think this would be the most exciting thing to talk
right.
about.
So moving into the alien abduction thing. Now, why would they want to come to Earth? Well, uh, the stuff on Earth, the stuff that's here, is probably the same as what's everywhere else in the universe. There's no materials on Earth that they're going to come and extract that are not everywhere else throughout the universe. There's only one thing unique to planet Earth, really, and that's Earth life. And wouldn't you know it, when people are having these interactions and these abductions, it seems like they're interested in Earth life. Like they're interested in biology and conducting medical research and experimentation of that level. So it really it makes sense if you think about it because they're probably curious about us. They appear to be doing genetic research, and not just on humans, by the way. There's extensive research that there are, and it only makes sense really from the alien angle that they're abducting cattle and livestock from farms all over the country. There have been thousands of reports of cattle mutilations that really don't make sense anything else. These are not experiments that humans do. And then you're also having people abducted. You're having people go missing at a pretty crazy rate. The number of people who go missing every year and they're just never seen or heard from again. So there's definitely something going on here. And you can't. I don't think it can be just hand waved away as all independent things.
Now, what's interesting is even though you and I have a different view on who these aliens are, the strange thing is I would if I had been in a debate with you, I mean, as your partner, I would have been saying, yes, there's definitely a phenomenon here. So for those Christian creationists listening into this discussion, Gary Bates actually argued that uh, even if one didn't believe in aliens or demons, there's definitely a problem or a mystery that needs to be solved because he cited the work of John Mack at Harvard, who was a professor at their medical school. He was head of their psychiatry department, and as a professional responsibility, uh, he was wanting to investigate claims of alien abductions because one, if it's a mental illness, that's a specialty. He needed to know why these people were going through it, and in the process, he said so many of these cases did not line up with mental illness as the fundamental cause. That got my attention. And then there have been other psychiatrists that had not alien abduction, but uh, other mysteries that were very troubling that they couldn't attribute to mental illness alone. So uh, this is very interesting. So how long did your debate last at Modern Day? Was it a 2 hour debate
It,
or 1 hour?
it was a little over an hour. My opponent in the debate, he actually really didn't disagree with too many points. He had conceded, yeah, there's aliens, but they're probably just not abducting people, which I don't think James knew that he was going to be, take that angle, that he was going to be very similar position to mine. They're out there. They came here in the past, but they're not abducting people now. But no, it was a fun debate,
Yeah,
and
like,
he was very cordial.
so actually, that's an interesting point. The NASA astrobiology department would actually favor the viewpoint that there's life out there, even possibly in the solar system, that is not that didn't originate from Earth. That's actually an accepted mainstream. It may be the minority position, but it's entertained in the mainstream. Uh, and there are, again, taxpayer dollars are financing these studies. And yes, it is a legitimate concern that we should be thinking if life can spontaneously arise elsewhere in the solar system, what effect would it have on the Earth's biosphere? These are legitimate questions. So, and like when we send these Mars probe out there, these $1 billion space probes that land on Mars, what do? They look for life. So there is a viewpoint of there could be life out there. Is there another level where there's what we would call intelligent life? Intelligent,
That's the question.
yeah. And then third, would intelligent life do alien abduction? And I think you could get people that would agree with, maybe one level and not the next, so on and so forth. So what evidence did you put forward to argue in favor for the possibility that the abductions were real?
Well, we have, and like you say, there are psychiatrists who have done research on these cases, and um, there's literally thousands of these people out there. You can assume that, yeah, a percentage of them are probably mentally ill. They're probably hallucinating. That's valid for a partial explanation. Are there people who are just lying? They're just making it up just because uh, they want attention, or because they really believe it is real, so they want to be able to help demonstrate that, so they're just going to fib a little bit. Yeah, that's probably true. But can you say that every single one of them fits into one of those categories? Or can you say that people are having these lucid dreams where they're not able to distinguish a dream from reality? And we've all had terrifying dreams and whatnot, but I think we all recognize that when we wake up, that it might have been very scary, but it was a dream. Um, the thing is, we only need one case. We only need one of these people to be truthful and not be mentally ill, and then the phenomena is confirmed. You can go and you can disprove that 99.9% of them are not happening. but we only need one case, and then the phenomena is confirmed. So it's a pretty high bar to go through and say that they're all not true. You can certainly do that for some of them, but you can't do that for all of them. And no, go ahead, Sal.
I was about to say that the one that was very compelling to me was John Mack's work at Harvard. And
I believe I read something from him.
what was impressive is the guy did not have to delve into this. He had all the reputation any academic would want. I mean, he's the head of the psychiatric department at their medical school at Harvard. I mean, this is like one of the top places. Harvard is perennially maybe in the top 5 medical schools in the United States. So for him to delve into this, and at the risk of his professional reputation, I said this seemed very, very sincere on his part when he would just speak, because when speaking the truth can, or let's say speaking your conviction could get you in serious trouble, then that indicates he was very convinced of what he was studying. And just as an anecdote, Alan Dershowitz, the famous Harvard law professor who's a Democrat who ironically defended President Trump during his impeachment. Now, that's neither here nor there, but I'm just trying to point out the stature of someone like that. The Harvard administration wanted to fire John Mack over this. And Alan Dershowitz intervened and said, he's done nothing unethical. All he's doing is speaking his conscience. Now, the guy could be wrong, but unless he's saying something that he knowingly knows is not true, you can't, there's no ground to fire him. And I found that whole drama very interesting. I said, yeah, he's not, John Mack is not some, some used car salesman or charlatan just trying to draw attention to himself. He won the Pulitzer Prize on a totally different topic. He had all the fame and acclaims that one could ever imagine. So why delve into this, except for the fact that he was convinced it was true? Now, whether he's mistaken is another thing, but that really did it for me personally.
Well, in fact, Hugh Ross, he had, about a month after my debate, he went on Modern Day Debate and he debated Tom Jump. If anyone who watches Modern Day Debate, they'll know he's one of the regular debaters there.
Oh, Tom Jump? Oh, you mean T Jump?
T Jump, Tom Jump, yeah, T Jump. He gets.
I'm sorry, I just heard. I think you probably said T Jump, but
Tom Jump.
I heard it as Tom Junk. Sorry.
No, Tom Jump or T Jump. I think he goes by both. But yeah, Smokey's friend Tom Jump. And Hugh Ross took the position that the what most Christians would say that the phenomena is confirmed, but that it's demonic in origin. And he presented, various pieces of evidence that he thinks point in that direction. And Tom Jump, being the militant skeptic that he is just dismissing it all, because they haven't landed on the White House lawn and said, by the way, here we are, which seems to be the standard of evidence that some people want. But that was an interesting debate. And Hugh Ross was saying that, he was going over, crash sites and whatnot. But Hugh Ross said it wasn't a physical event, but he's talking about crash sites with craters. I don't know how demonic entities in a non-physical craft would crash and make a crater. And I don't think demonic entities would need a craft to fly around in. I think it's pretty clear from the Bible that the angels weren't going around in built craft of some kind, that they obviously had ability to slip in and out of our dimension, if you will, at will.
Well, the thing that, and I haven't studied the matter in detail, there are people that have, but John Mack had said that one of these abductions, the patients he was dealing with had suffered abductions. Neighbors had said they'd also seen the alien craft. So that's one thing. And then we have all the mutilated animals or any other sort of physical disturbances associated with the abductions. I mean, I'm getting this kind of really secondhand, and I don't have the original reports from all the people involved
No,
making the reports, but that's kind of the impression I got.
there's definitely something going on here, and you have just recently, the Pentagon confirmed the authenticity of several videos that have been going around for a few years now that show our pilots interacting with these craft, and that show these craft are what they believe to be these craft on radar, and confirm that they have no idea what the thing is. And there's basically two. It's either terrestrial or it's extraterrestrial. And the United States defense budget is probably spends more than half the total world expenditure on defense. So I think it's very unlikely that there's another country out there that has technology that's so far above our own that we have no idea what it is. That seems like a very unlikely scenario to me.
Well, just for again for our viewers, I'm just going to mention this. The former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid,
Yes, yes.
from Nevada, he spoke out on this. He said he's very concerned, and I would presume this is because of talks he's had with the military. And he said there are times these incidents have affected our nuclear capability, which is actually pretty disturbing. The former, this gentleman has a really long title. He's the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon. He also came out and expressed his concern. So almost regularly now, or not regularly, but sporadically, but frequent enough that it gets my attention, on Fox News, Tucker Carlson.
Tucker has covered it. Yes.
Yes, it's there, and there are incidents that were very tragic, where because I've used to fly airplanes, where there was a young man just going out on a routine flight, and he claimed to see UFOs. And then he said his instruments were going out, and he crashed. He died. That was very serious. And I'm just like, all indications are the guy was not wanting to didn't have a death wish or anything. Anyone who flies, you want to fly and land and just have a great time. And all indications were this guy that's all he really wanted to do, and his life just tragically ended. And so these things do bother me. And there have been a number of reports by retired airline pilots. They said, we saw stuff, but we're not going to talk about it because
they have code words, I think, to use on radio so that they're not announcing UFOs. I believe I heard a pilot say.
Reason, I mean, there's a reason for that. Is if one of the requirements is if you're an airline pilot, you're mentally fit.
Right.
Anything that's questioning that would be liabilities for the airlines involved, liabilities to themselves to be open about this. And yet, on the other hand, this is a serious problem. And then we know that in World War II, which is really interesting, they're always on the lookout for
the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, the Foo Fighters.
In World War II, we thought it was German tech. They thought it was our tech. It was both sides were seeing it. Neither side knew what the hell it was.
So the Foo Fighters. So as you said, maybe 99% of this could be explained. And the creationist position, not that there's a unified creationist position, but the position articulated by the president of Creation Ministries International is that a very large number, and he put the figure at say 90, 95, even 99% might be explainable by other causes than aliens. But he said there's the thing is that people that have studied this and really had their reputations on the line, meaning they had really everything to lose, nothing to gain by engaging in this, except the only thing they would gain is knowing that they had spoken their conscience and cleared their conscience by saying what they said. They said there's approximately that 1% or whatever percent they articulated that has residual
There's a residual that you can't debunk.
Yep. Yep.
And whoa, I lost my train of thought here. 1 second while I try
Reset
and
your
reclaim
gyros.
that. Yeah. So Hugh Ross, yeah, he came on Modern Day Debate, and oh well, not only did the Pentagon recently release or confirm the authenticity of these tapes over the summer, and in fact, it was the day before I went on the debate. An astrophysicist contracted by the Pentagon came out and said that the government has uh, craft in its possession that are not made on Earth. It's clear they are not from this Earth. Now, you could really only say that if the material that it's made on is not found on Earth, if it had to come from somewhere else, or if just the technological capabilities are so far and above what humans have that there's no way any human anywhere could have constructed this. Then it would obviously, and it's intelligently made. It would have to be from, you know, from outside Earth. It would have to be uh, an alien craft, and I think that's what we see. And not only do we have reports from our military, but we have this. Other militaries all over the world have had similar encounters with these. In Mexico, Brazil, in the Soviet Union, had huge files on aliens and their interactions with them over Soviet airspace. The Iranian Air Force has had encounters with these craft. So it's not just a few isolated incidents of a pilot or a radar operator just mixing something up. This is happening all over the world. And like you said, with our nuclear silos, with our missiles being shut off, if now the only thing that was keeping the world from blowing itself up from the probably the mid 50s until the late 80s was the concept of mutually assured destruction. Now, that would be that either the US or the Soviet Union, we had enough nukes to basically turn each country into a wasteland, but due to the distance, if we noticed their nuclear missiles in the air, we would have plenty of time to launch ours before theirs hit. So, yeah, you could destroy us, but we could also destroy you. So, nobody wanted their country turned into a parking lot, so it never happened. But if you had the ability to shut the other side's missiles off so that they can see yours coming, but they can't retaliate, that's a very, very scary proposition. And for these craft to hang around the silos and our missiles to be made inoperable for, I believe, several days in some point for no coherent logical reason, it definitely gives you something to look at. And if you remember, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, he came out and he said that actually, from his perspective, the fact if it were aliens, it would actually be a relief because it means that there's not some rogue nation or some terrorist group that's hacking into our system and that has the capability of doing that. If it's aliens, at least for him, that was a measure of relief. And you mentioned Senator Harry Reid, who was in the Senate for 30 some years. He was the Senate Majority Leader for a lot of those years, one of the most powerful people in the country who surely would have received briefings from the intelligence agencies. And he said, what's been released so far is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that we haven't seen. And this is the crucial part for this. Other conspiracy theorists out there, they have to invent these stories about cover up and suppression. Like Ken Hovind has to say, "Oh, the 14-foot skeletons, they're being hidden. It's being concealed from you." Or the people who believe 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, it's a big conspiracy. The government and Bush and Cheney trying to make money for Halliburton and launch a war, and they have to invent these kind of really elaborate scenarios that seem very unlikely. Uh, this phenomena here, the aliens, is the only one that everybody admits. Everybody admits, yes, there is a cover up. Yes, the government has information that they are suppressing. Everybody knows that. Now, if there's nothing going on here, why would they be so tight-lipped, so secretive about it for so long? It really doesn't make sense unless there is at the core something groundbreaking. There is something that would shake reality, shake civilization to its core at the heart of all this. And I think this is why you're starting to see tidbits come out now. I think it's almost the idea, and this came out in the summer. while there were other things going on with COVID, and it actually got kind of just a blip with what was going on with COVID, that they released. Oh yeah, Pentagon astrophysicists. Yeah, they've got craft from other countries, and it really didn't garner the type of attention that you would think a revelation like that would garner. But yeah, there definitely
It's
is cover up
yeah.
going on here.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, I would characterize it as like, well, it may not be an active cover up in the sense that anyone had done anything wrong. That's what I consider a cover up. But it's like, well, this is sensitive information in that we don't want to be admitting our nuclear capabilities were being messed with or compromised in a way we don't know. That's pretty distressing. So
Absolutely.
now, President Clinton talked about it. He said, he doesn't. He said he would have revealed all the files, and well, that's Clinton. Jimmy Carter said he believes
Carter
in UFOs.
did, yes. So did Ronald Reagan.
So it's like, now Bernie Sanders, not that I would have voted for him. Most people know where my political allegiances are, but is either Bernie Sanders or someone else promised that if elected president, he would release all the files related to anything about UFOs. And so
I think Hillary Clinton said something similar to that too. I'm not 100% on that.
But
Bill Clinton tried, I believe, twice to get. I don't think he went there, but I believe twice he tried to send somebody in the administration to go to Area 51, and he got rebuffed on that. I believe both times they wouldn't let him in.
Well, it's kind of hard I wish a president would just kind of say, okay, we looked into the files, we don't know, or there is a phenomenon. But it would be very problematic if a president came out and said, we've had problems with our nuclear capability that are unexplained. That's something you don't want to announce to your enemies. Oh my goodness, you do not want to say that. You do not want to. You want to project an image of competence and control. The moment you start to say there's a problem we can't explain, it may signal a serious weakness, or it may signal a legitimate phenomenon. In either case, one is not projecting an image of control. So what I find interesting then is we have this Christopher Mellon coming out, who was, I believe, under Clinton. The viewers can cross-check if I'm identifying the correct administration. And he was the U.S. Assistant Secretary for Defense for Intelligence. So I don't know what to make of that. Why would he be weighing in on this unless it were a serious issue? So,
well, I mean, a lot of times people, they focus on some of the more kookier people, some of the more less reliable people who make these reports, and they don't really focus on like the videos released that were confirmed over the summer. These are college-educated military pilots who have thousands of flight hours. They've flown all over the world. They have, and not just in America, in other countries too. So they would have a pretty good idea of what type of natural phenomena you're going to see in the sky. So if they're seeing something and they're bewildered, they have no clue what it is. The military radar operators who stare at radar screens all day, every day, they have no clue what's going on here. It definitely leads to one to conclude that there is something legitimate going on here, and it's very scary because we don't know what it is, but nevertheless, does appear to be real, at least at some level.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing, is these people have more to lose by coming forward, and that's why I view their testimony as more credible for the reasons we've articulated. Like, say, if you're an airline pilot, that's just, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you saw something and maybe your conscience is telling you this is like a UFO? I mean, yeah, as a pilot, you're responsible for reporting things that you see. That's part of your job. But then what are you going to do when you're really convinced? So you're going to frame it in a way that's like, I don't want to jeopardize my career. So Anyway, this has been a great conversation. I have something coming up, and I'm not really wanting to cut you off. This has been so good, but maybe it's good that we end the conversation when it's still getting really interesting. So if you
Well,
could offer a
that's
few closing thoughts before we move, before I have to finish the stream, I want to
well.
thank you very much for your time.
Oh well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Sal. You're a delight to deal with, whether you're talking about creationism or whatnot, or just politics or anything else. So it's been an honor to be here, and thank you for listening to what I have to say about this. It's something that, I've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about. I think it's one of the most important issues facing humanity, and I definitely think that probably over the next maybe 10 to 15 years that there will be a some amazing things happening in this field. I think the truth is right over the horizon. So,
Well, thank you. And I guess that's it for this segment of the Evidence and Reasons Wild Frontier. And I invite the viewers to join us for other Wild Frontier productions. So thanks. Take care, and everybody have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.